Welcome to Consciously Inspired Minds, where we ditch the default and live life by design. I'm your host, Brandy White, personal growth enthusiast, entrepreneur, and lifestyle coach. I host conversations with creators, entrepreneurs, healers, and educators committed to living a life of truth, intention, and connection. Understanding how to discover their inner vision to design their outer world. Our guests take us on a journey of what it means to embody a life of conscious inspiration, joy, impact, and service. Get ready to be inspired. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Consciously Inspired Minds. This is a really special episode, and I'm really excited for it. I have my good friend on today, Nate Krugman. Hey, Nate, how are you?
Doing well, Brandy. How are you?
I'm doing great. I am really excited for this chat today. It's so funny because as I was getting prepped for our conversation, I was kind of reflecting on our friendship and the first day we met and how we have continued to kind of come into each other's orbit, and our kids go to school together and our families are beginning to come together as well. And so just it's crazy how the universe works.
Yeah.
And if you're paying attention and if you're listening, and miracles happen every day. And I really think that it was intentional that we are here today having this very important conversation about what you do and how you're showing up in the world and how you're living a consciously inspired life. So thank you for being here. I know that our listeners are going to be extremely inspired and encouraged and hopeful about what you're going to share with us today. And so just to give everybody a little bit more information about Nate, he is the executive director of EXO Clarity, which is a nonprofit here locally in Cincinnati. And as I mentioned on previous episodes, I'm a year old now. I think this is my 27th episode, so super exciting. When I first started this podcast, I was inspired by all the women who were coming into my life through different certifications or different networking things that I was a part of, both nationally and here local. But as I continue to get even more involved in my local community, I'm so inspired to share the work and the efforts of local folks who are making such a difference. And I think so often we are looking way outside of our own local communities to find that inspiration, when really it's in our backyard. And so it's really with this episode and this podcast, things have evolved where I want to start spotlighting what's happening here more in our local community and doing what I can to sort of elevate the messaging and the mission of so many inspirational folks here, such as yourself. So thank you so much. Just to give everybody a little bit more information on Nate, he is located in Maineville, Ohio, which is where he resides with his wife, Sarah, and their 3 children. He's passionate about helping others discover their unique missions in life. So naturally, we have a lot in common here, Nate and I. As a cancer survivor turned thriver, he has undertaken incredible challenges like kayaking 470 miles along the Ohio River and cycling 3,000 miles from California to Florida to support cancer-related causes. Nate walked 337 miles from Cleveland to Cincinnati to raise awareness for EXO Ignite Discovery, providing free adventure therapy retreats for those battling burnout. With a robust professional background in nonprofit and sales management, Nate's mission is to empower individuals to embrace life's challenges and discover their unique strengths and purpose. Incredible, Nate. Again, as the executive director for EXO Clarity, I had jumped on his website. We had reconnected at Evo Fit, which is a local gym here, and we were doing the Murph. And again, we happened to cross each other's paths, and I asked you what you had been up to, and you're like, hey, I've EXO Clarity. It's lighting me up right now. And I got home that day, and or maybe it was the next day even, because after doing the Murph,
Right.
don't have much left in you after that. But anyway, I got on the website and I was blown away by this website. It's so comprehensive. It's so captivating. It's so thought out. And it just pulled me in and inspired me so much. I called Nate that day and I was like, wow, like this warrants, he's probably like, what are you doing? Like calling me and I'm like, this warrants a phone call, my friend. This does not warrant a text message or, hey, great job. And so we were talking more about EXO Clarity and what was going on there and his passion for the outdoors. And so one thing led to the next, and here we are having this conversation today. But I first, if you don't mind, just want to also let the listeners know where you and I first met. And I think this will also give a little bit of context behind the kind of person you are. And Nate and I first met at a local chamber. They were moving offices, the Little Miami River Chamber Alliance. And you were with Cancer-Free Kids at the time. Nate and I had never met, but we're in the same community. Our kids go to school together, play sports together, all of that. But this was the first time I had met Nate, and we were both there helping the chamber relocate, move offices. And we became fast friends, I would say. I mean, it was one of those things where you exchange, what do you do? What do you do for a living? And at the time I had just walked away from corporate, and you were at Cancer-Free Kids. And I had told you and Meredith, who is the VP of operations for the chamber, I was telling the both of you what my biggest dream, which was to have Mode as a place where an event space where people can come and talk about important things happening in the community and nonprofits and authors and all of the folks here locally who are inspiring our community. And then also next to that, an event, a retail space where folks could then come right next door and purchase something, whether that be art, books, to take with them that would remind them of their experience. And you just looked at me and were so interested.
Yes.
And I hadn't shared that idea with many people. And here I am just like letting it go. And I'm like, what am I doing? What am I doing? What am I doing? And you're like, that's incredible. And then you started to brainstorm ideas with me. And at the end of our conversation, you said, if there's anything I can do to help you, you let me know. And I'm like, and that left a lasting impression on me. And so I think a lot of times we express our dreams to people and they're like, oh, that's really great. And we're kind of swiftly moving on to the next topic. Where like, I really felt like you and Meredith in that moment were really there with me and really present in that idea and believed in what I was saying. And I think you were the very first person who believed in what I was saying outside of my friends and family who I'd shared that with. So I just wanted to share that story with you and let you know.
I love that. I love that you brought that up. I remember that like it was yesterday.
Really?
Carrying those boxes, yes. And so it's amazing. It's incredible that you're doing it.
Yeah.
And you've been a huge source of encouragement for me as I'm starting this new adventure. And so it's just awesome. Like you said, it's not random. You know, you're in my life for a reason, and I'm very thankful for our friendship.
Yeah, same. Thank you for that. Yeah. And then I mentioned our kids go to the same school and they play sports together. Our youngest daughters, they've had play dates and then they've also played soccer together. And then I had an opportunity just a few seasons ago to get to know your wife, Sarah, better. She and I were just sitting on the sidelines at practice every week, chatting about what she's doing. And she's incredible as well. She's a teacher here locally at Mason Schools, and she was in the midst of getting her master's degree, and she completed that. I remember talking about her final paper that she was submitting. And so she's doing incredible work in the school system as well. Is it a program, English as second language, ESL programming, where she's helping kids who English is not their primary language, and she's helping them integrate into the classroom, which is incredible. And it gives me chills to talk about because I know that she's so deeply passionate about it, and has recently taken on a new role within the schools and where that's more of a focus for her, and she's continuing to lean in there and try new things. And I was just talking to her on our walk, and we'll get into the rock walks here in a moment, but I was just with Nate and his family yesterday morning and had a chance to connect with Sarah about the impact she's making in the schools and what she's trying to do. So I say all that because our listeners are in for a treat today. You and your family are incredible, and I'm honored to have you here. So thank you again. Where I'd like to start, Nate, is a little bit about your childhood. Your love for the outdoors is incredible. Your love for adventure. Tell us a little bit about your kind of the roots and where you come from and how that sort of impacted and informed who you are and where you are today.
Yeah. Well, I didn't grow up in an adventurous home, really. I just grew up in an amazing family, just very blessed. My mom was a preschool teacher. My father worked for Dale Carnegie for 42 years.
What?
Yeah. So one of my favorite books is How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's in my office right now. And so I get a lot of virtues from both my mom and dad, and just very close, very blessed, very fortunate. And I've got two siblings, Abby, who's my younger sister, and then John, who's my older brother.
Okay. I just met Abby yesterday too.
Yeah. Abby's great. We're all very close. Abby lives in my neighborhood, and my brother John lives right down the road. So it's awesome that we're close, and we got that gift because my parents really modeled the importance of family. And yeah, so I'm an 80s kid. I grew up in College Hill, so born and raised in Cincinnati, and just a very rich childhood, a lot of diversity in College Hill, a lot of just rich friendships. And so it was awesome. But the adventure thing really came later in life. But I think the first adventure and the best adventure was learning the importance of family. And I can look back on all the adventures, and I can say my favorite adventure of all is being a father and a husband. So,
Wow.
So I got that gift from my parents.
Yeah. And I feel that. I see you at sporting events and how you're supporting your family and how you're supporting the kids. And it seems like it really comes natural to you, and you coach Harrison's football team. So
Yep.
Yeah, no, I definitely get that sense about you. Absolutely. Amazing. So tell me a little bit more about your dad and his time with Dale Carnegie for 42 years.
42 years.
I mean, that certainly had some impact on who you are. Tell me a little bit about that. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, my hero in life was my dad, and just always wanted to be like him. And tearing up a little bit because I lost him to cancer a few years ago, and he just left such an indelible mark in my life. And so from a very early age, I just always wanted to be like him. And, I just remember, dressing up like him. He always had a suit and tie on.
Okay.
And he always just dressed really well. And
what's his name?
John.
Okay.
John. And so just always a hard worker. His passion was he was never chasing money and all that stuff. He was chasing impact. And so I get that from him. But he just loved seeing people have breakthroughs. And Dale Carnegie, for the listeners who don't know, it's all about, relationships and how to communicate and all that stuff. So he really modeled that for us as a family. And he was just so graceful in how he just developed relationships and cared about people. And so it's something that, it's burned in my heart to do the same thing in life and kind of carry on his legacy.
Yeah. What were some things that you think he modeled for you specifically? Are there any specific stories that you can share or any specific moments that have stayed with you and on your heart and that sort of fuel what you do every day?
Yeah, he was always there. He was the dad that never missed a baseball game. And it's funny, I always looked for my dad. When I was up up at bat or in the dugout or in the outfield. And I'm like always trying to find, where's my dad at? And I would always find him in these obscure places, like out in left field or way up in the bleachers, because he was nervous. And I get that now watching my kids play sports. But he was always there with his suit and tie and supporting. And so that's left a huge impact on me because I would never miss my kids' stuff. And so that's why I coach, I've coached baseball and football and soccer and all that stuff. And so I just want to be as, engaged in my kid's life, just as he was. And he just was a huge supporter. He just always was encouraging me. I think back, just out of this, like with EXO, I'd love to kind of observe and encourage people like, hey, you're really good at this. Like, and just really encourage people to like really, clarify and cultivate their strengths. And I got that from my dad. He would always see that in me as a kid, even when I didn't see it or believe it. He would kind of extract those things out through observation, like, hey, you're really good at this or really good at that. And I never really felt like I was, but he saw something in me that I'm starting to see later in life. And it's just really cool. So I kind of want to do the same thing that he did with me and other people is see those strengths and just be a huge cheerleader for people to like really understand how they're uniquely wired and gifted. And yeah, so I got all of that from him.
Yeah. What do you think fueled his passion for encouraging people and getting people where they wanted to go and helping them pursue their strengths? Where do you think that came from?
That's a good question. I think probably his faith was his foundation.
Okay.
And I think he got a lot of that purpose was driven through that, and that he feels just like I do, where we all are here for a purpose, just like we met for a purpose, and people have strengths, and all of that is not random. Like we're gifted with that. And I think he, like me, had this deep curiosity where he saw that, and he felt like that's just such a huge part of life, is just to encourage people based on what they're naturally gifted at. And so I think that came from his faith, probably.
Okay.
That we're here for a purpose.
Yeah.
And that being the foundation, and just to encourage people, to just keep going and reach your peak potential just by understanding how you are wired and not trying to be someone else.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Do you mind if we talk a little bit about his journey with cancer and how that impacted you? Because I think that would probably, certainly give some more, shed some more light on your passion behind what you do also.
Yeah. 100%.
So what was that experience like? If you wouldn't mind sharing with us his diagnosis and sort of his journey there and how you were feeling through that time.
Well, it was unexpected, like it usually is. And I was there when we found out, and we just heard it at the same time. And it was stage 4 lung cancer, and just totally unexpected. And I just remember leaving. It was just me and him and my mom. And I just remember, gave me a huge hug and said, it's going to be okay. And his positivity never wavered through that whole process. And it just was incredible to, reverse roles, and just encourage him through that. And I'm a cancer survivor, like you mentioned in the intro, and it was so much harder to watch him go through that than me go through that. And so I'm thankful that I kind of could relate to him, and knowing what that feels like and how scary that is. But he just was a champion. He just never let his hope and faith diminish in that process. In fact, it got stronger, as difficult as it was. And it was, it was inspiring to see him not give up and to continue to be a model for everybody around him. And it's like, I remember when I went through cancer, it kind of feels like there's a spotlight, everybody's watching. And so I think he knew that too. And he just continued to be a model. And it was just incredibly encouraging and inspiring to see him go through something so difficult and to do it the right way.
How do you think you showed up for your dad in those moments? How did you encourage him, and how did you stay strong yourself during that time?
I just encouraged him. I mean, it's funny. Like, I would call him every day.
Yeah.
Before that even happened, he would just be that person I would call. So I'd call him every day. I'd give him an update if I had a meeting or something I was excited about. And so it's weird not to be able to call him now, but I would call him every day, and I knew how short life was through my journey. And so just being present, not trying to say, here's the answer, or this is the way you should do it. It's just like, just being present with him and just helping him with taking him to oncology appointments and all that stuff. And just sitting with him, watching the Reds game or the Bearcats, just being next to him.
Yeah. Yeah. Just sharing in that space and energy, and just kind of enjoying those moments, being together, just being. I think so often we miss that as humans. We're so focused on what's coming up next instead of just taking a pause and actually being with one another. And that's beautiful. So you had mentioned you're a cancer survivor as well. So did you get your diagnosis before your dad?
I did. So mine was, oh gosh, I was diagnosed right after college.
Oh, wow.
And, it was like him, just shocked. It's not what I expected to hear. I had testicular cancer, and I just remember, having a pain, and I'm not one to go to the doctor. Like, I didn't even know who my doctor was at the time.
Right.
And so I had to call my mom, and I didn't tell her what was happening, but I just was like, I just felt something deep within, like I should go get it checked. And so I remember I had this brand new car, and I remember driving into the parking lot, and it had one of those boulders that has the address, like right where you turn into the parking lot.
Sure.
And brand new car. And I just was so nervous that I hit that thing, and my bumper fell off.
Oh, wow.
And I walk in, and I was reading like a Sports Illustrated, and it was like upside down. I wasn't reading it. I just felt like something was wrong. And so they called my name, and I go back, and
you were by yourself.
I was by myself. So nobody
knew. Wow.
Nobody knew.
Okay.
And
what
so
made you believe,
nice
what made you believe
there.
It was because of, was it just the pain that you thought, oh, something must be wrong? Or had you experienced something else that gave you sort of this ominous energy around what it could potentially be?
Yeah, it was like, I just remember laying in bed, and I kind of knew it was, and that is not
Really?
That is, yes, it was very unusual. But I just remember laying in bed. I was living with a friend out in Anderson, and I sort of knew something was wrong. And so, so I just followed my gut, and thankfully I did. Caught it early, still had to do chemo and all that. But thankfully I went when I did. And just so after I heard the C word, I just remember, because I was dating Sarah at the time.
Yeah.
We just recently started dating, and I just remember pulling into Sharon Woods on my way home, and just was processing and praying, and I was like, God, I just trust you. And so I think I called Sarah first, and then I called my parents. But it was, that's not what defines me. It's what I did with it, just like my dad. And so my identity is not even a cancer survivor. It's that was a catalyst in my life to adventure. As awesome as my dad was and mom, like my dad wasn't like a backpacker. Like, we never went out west to do rock climbing. That just wasn't like, I didn't grow up in that.
Yeah.
But that cancer was really what catapulted me into this life of adventure. So I look back on that, and as awful as cancer is, it's a gift. It was a gift to me. And I think it can be a gift to other people if they see it from a different lens. I remember going in the day before chemo, my oncologist, Dr. Richards, was like, hey, Nate, there's this book that you can read. It's about a woman who would wear red lipstick. And that was her way of expressing her inner spirit in an outward way. And I said, hey, doc, that's great, but I'm not going to wear red lipstick. I love that idea. But I said, let me think of something. And so
what encouraged him to tell you that story anyway? What was
I don't know. I just, it's like something, I feel like it's spiritual. Like I think he could just pick up on that's what I needed to hear. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure he shared that with everybody, but you know, you can kind of pick up on the unseen stuff.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I'm thankful he brought that up, because that's what really changed my life. Was it's almost like he gave me a challenge.
Okay.
And so
I went
home that night, and
what did you make that mean? What was the symbolism behind that? What was the hidden meaning behind wearing the red lipstick to kind of share? I don't know. I guess the first thing that comes to mind for me is I tell women, how do we make sure our outer world reflects our inner world?
Yeah.
What did that mean for you when he said that?
Well, it was like there was a lot of stuff going on internally, obviously, emotionally and spiritually. And I just was like, yes, how can I convey that I'm not going to give up? How can I convey like this is who I am going through this like long road of suffering? Like, how can I convey that in a creative way that can encourage not only myself, but Sarah, my parents, and John and Abby, and all the people around me. So it was more powerful than words, you know, just saying it. Like that woman who would put in red lipstick, like that conveyed something more powerful than words could. And so I went home that night, and I had really long hair. It's getting gray right now, but
aren't we all, my friend?
Yes.
I'm going in for hair color way more often than I used to.
Yeah, right. But I remember going home that night, and I cut a mohawk, and I remember it like it was yesterday. Yeah. And I was like, I'm going to lose my hair anyways. So I'm going to do a mohawk. And this thing was like straight up. It was epic. And I remember walking into my first day of chemo. And prior to that, like I got tours of where I'd be getting it. And I just remember seeing all the people in the room, like the chemo lounge. And there was just like so much sadness and despair, and just, it was quiet. It was uncomfortable. Like nobody talked from what I observed. And so when I came in with this mohawk, this light bulb went off, because everybody in the waiting room, like it just made them smile, and they wanted to touch it. And and the doctors came out, and the nurses, and I just saw how like how something so simple as a mohawk could just encourage people. Yeah. And so it was like such a simple thing. And I remember sitting in the chemo lounge, and I just saw like conversations started to happen. And so this light bulb was like, wow, it's not that hard to encourage people. Even just something simple and stupid like a mohawk. And so that light bulb went off. And then, you know, through that process too, like we grew up, we didn't have a lot. We had plenty, but we didn't have a lot. And so I think I got that thing where it's like, oh, you know, are we going to have enough to provide? And so financially, I'm thinking every time I went on a doctor's appointment or getting this drug or that drug, and I'm thinking, well, how much is this going to cost? And so I began to think more about that than me getting better physically. And I thought, oh man, and I know that happens because I deal with a lot of people with cancer, and it just, how's this going to put my family in financial shape? And it's really difficult. And so a light bulb went off. Like that is a thing for me. That's a thing for other people, where how can I help them just focus on getting better physically? And so that was a light bulb that I can help other people that way. I didn't know how. And it all kind of came to a full circle. I was at church, and I was praying, and I was like, God, send me, like, I'll do whatever you want. Like, I want to help people. And, you know, I'm praying that, didn't have any eyebrows. Like, I just didn't. And the clearest thing I've ever heard in my life was ride your bike. It sounds crazy, but ride your bike across the country to help people with their medical bills. And I remember
Had you been doing any sort of adventuring before that?
No.
Outdoor? No, it was
nothing.
You hadn't been riding your bike before this a whole lot?
I didn't even have a bike.
What?
Like, didn't have a bike. That was not like a subconscious, subtle, Didn't watch a documentary on
Wow.
people
Wow. Wow.
doing that.
Wow.
Like it was
Yeah.
like totally out of left field.
Sure. 100% a
And
download. Yeah. Okay.
yeah, so I'm
Yeah.
just like, that can't be right. I mean, we had $88,000 in debt just because the insurance stuff was just really bad. That new car, which was a mistake, we had that and college loans. And so, I mean, I just, for years, like I wanted it to go away because I was like, surely I did not, like, that's not right because I don't even enjoy cycling, didn't have a bike, not spandex is not my thing. Like there's nothing about it. It was completely daunting. And so for years and years, I wanted that to go away and it just never did. And I felt like if I don't do this, if I don't walk through my fear, like I don't even know how to like describe the feeling. Like it would just be like, I just have to do this. And so finally we paid off all the debt, bought a bike with cash. This surgeon at UC Health he helped me ride bike, like learning how to ride a bike. And so I remember going out with him in Indian Hill and doing these hills. And so finally I flew out to, long story short, I flew out to San Diego, and my mother-in-law, Sarah's mom, amazing. She's the hero of the story. She found this guy in Florida to let us borrow his RV. So she drove all the way to Florida to get this RV and then drove all the way out to San Diego. And that's where I flew. She met up with me. She had my bike. And I remember being in this hotel and I'm thinking, how am I going to do this? Like, I'm not a cyclist. I barely knew how to change a tire. I can only do 50 miles a day without my left knee hurting. And so I had to do 100 miles back to back to back to back to back. And I just did all my training on the Loveland bike trail. So I was like way outside my comfort, totally not qualified.
So what was your intention behind, like when you got this message, ride your bike across the country? Yeah. So what was the intention behind that as well, to fuel you enough and encourage you enough and give you the will to say yes and to completely surrender to that message?
Yeah. Well, it was those light bulbs. I at that point I was done with treatment. I had my port taken out and things were good. And it's almost like I think of it as like someone who is in the military and it's like they were done and they got to go home. But I'm like, I know what it's like where they were and just the pain. And I'm like, I have to go back in to help people. And so like those three light bulbs of encouraging people, inspiring people, and then helping people financially so they could focus on getting better, all those kind of came into formation. And so it actually, I have this card on my desk. I rarely look at it, but it's like a little business card. And it's just, it was just to creatively, so the mission was to creatively encourage, inspire, and financially assist those battling cancer. So before I left,
that down before
you
left?
Okay. Yeah, that's the card that I gave people to fundraise. And so I called.
So you were handing this card out to raise money to then give to folks who were impacted by cancer. Okay.
Yeah. Yep. So the organization was called Courage for Cancer.
Okay.
So I had a website and I partnered with the Spirit of Cincinnati, who was a nonprofit. And so they collected the money and we just dispersed that to families at Cincinnati Children's to help them with their medical bills. So I cold called Children's and I said, hey, just a normal guy. I want to do this crazy thing and I want all the money, 100% of it, to go to the families who need it. And I don't think they took me serious, but we raised, I think it was like $35,000 and gave them all the money. And I did a video each day to encourage the kids. And so, like one day would be like, if you have something daunting in your life, like cancer, but you can't look at it in the entirety. Like it's just one pedal at a time. It's 1 mile at a time. It's one day at a time. And so each day I would have like a creative, encouraging message that I would send the kids at Children's.
How did you get the video to them?
I just put it on the website.
Okay.
And so social workers and nurses and stuff would share that with the patients.
And what
And
year
so
was this?
that was 2014.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
But that really is what, again, I didn't grow up as an adventurous person at all. And so having walked through my fear and doing that, and that's such a long story, but so many amazing things happened on that where I got done and I did far more than I ever thought I could. And it's almost like my left knee would always hurt around 50 miles on the Loveland Bike Trail. And the psychology of it was I was doing about 100 miles a day. I think the average ultimately was like 88 miles a day. And, all the adversity, the wind and the mountains and the desert and the cars and the semis and all the stuff, that adrenaline, like my knee never hurt until what's crazy is when I got to Florida, I was back on a bike path and that's the only day that my knee hurt. So I kind of learned this lesson of like, you have to get outside your comfort zone. And there's so many things when you go outside of that, they're just like these provisionary gifts that you get.
Yes.
And so I learned all these incredible things and I get done with that trip. And at the time I was working at the Cincinnati Zoo and I got done and I was like, I definitely want to be done cycling. But like, again, I want to go back into the war zone and continue to help people.
What's next? Yeah.
Yeah.
How can I continue to support? How long did it take you to bike across the country?
39 days.
39 days. And you were by yourself the whole time?
Well, Tina was there in the RV.
Okay.
Yeah. So I would just say, hey, I'll meet you, the halfway point for lunch, or I'll meet you at the end of the day. So she was always kind of close enough, but
incredible.
Yeah, I just did it by myself. And yeah, so she was instrumental.
What do you think it was that inspired Tina to go to Florida, meet you in California? What was that? I mean, that's deep love and commitment right there.
Yeah. Well, it's like, I think it's in all of us where we have this, like, we're built to do hard things. We're built to go on adventures. And one of my favorite movies is Lord of the Rings. And I think I love it so much because it's like they leave the Shire. And I think that's the best way to say it. It's like they leave the Shire, which is this like comfortable place. And they had this amazing adventure. And so for Tina, I think she was kind of tapping into the same thing I was, which is I want to do something that's beyond me for other people. And that was beyond her. And she was doing it for me. And so, and that's the best adventure when you sort of leave your comfort zone for the sake of other people, not for ego or not to just say, I did this amazing thing, but to do it for like a meaningful purpose is the key to having a great adventure. So I think she was just doing the same thing I was, and it looked different. And hers was just as difficult and just as rewarding doing what she did. And I learned, like, you can't do anything great in life without a team. So had Sarah not been a part of like kind of cultivating the plan, where I'm going to stop and all that stuff, and then Tina being there and supporting me with all of that, like there's no way I could have done that. And so you need the right people around you. And that was another light bulb that went off.
Wow. That's so inspiring. And going back to what you say, you can't do anything in life without a team. Yeah. And I come from, my old self would say I can do everything on my own because I've always had to. And so that's the only way I know. And I'm really trying to embrace this idea of how I build team and collaboration in my life. And I strongly believe in trusting and surrendering and miracles happening every day and throwing myself into new situations. And that really opens up so many blessings and so many doors of opportunity. And most recently, there have been so many gifts coming into my life because of it. And I think
Yeah.
to your point, that's one of the reasons why I started this podcast is because I was hearing so many amazing stories and how people were on their own adventures, whether that be as leaders, as entrepreneurs, as healers, as educators. And I personally was so inspired by it. And I knew that listeners, our community would be inspired by it as well. And I'll be the first to admit, every time I do a podcast, I get nervous in the beginning.
Yeah.
Because we don't know how it's going to go.
Right.
Here we are live having this conversation, and I just go through some deep breathing techniques and kind of get grounded and sort of do a ritual before I hop on the show. But every time after I'm done, it's so fulfilling.
Yes.
It's so fulfilling, and it has brought so many blessings and gifts into my life. And that is what continues to fuel me. And so when you're telling me this story about when we're sort of even pouring purpose into others, which I talked about on a previous podcast with CC Collins, the president of the chamber, there's no better gift than that.
Yes. Yeah.
And
it's amazing. There's beautiful things on the other side of fear.
Yes.
And there really are. Like, I was nervous too this morning. I feel like I get nervous a lot, and I just remember whether it's public speaking or a meeting, it's just like I always find that I'm nervous, and I always pray about that. Like, how, like, God, I hate that, because it's just like I wish I could just get over that. But I remember my dad telling me, it's like nervousness means that you care. And when you lose that, then I think you lose the dopamine high of doing something that's hard and something that you don't feel like you can do. And I always think of it as like, God never peddles for you, but he will provide provisions along the way.
Yes.
You know? And it's like, we have to do the hard work. We have to, like, God didn't take away the fear. He didn't take away the nervousness. He didn't take away the aches and the pains. And I don't think he ever will. Because I think it's that's the design, is there's beautiful things when you go through hard, long, daunting roads and bottomless valleys. Like, when that's where growth happens. Growth doesn't happen when you're comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like my kids, they're, you know, as you know, my family's at the pool right now, and it's like, had I turned this down and done that, like, I would have missed something beautiful. And maybe there's someone out there that gets something from this, where they feel encouraged and they feel like, I want to do something that changed a life, and it has a ripple effect in their family and their community. So it's almost like I see that code. I call them God codes, where it's like, if something is difficult and hard, there's probably like a gift somewhere in that. So
100%.
Instead of running away from it, kind of run to it.
Mm-hmm.
and grow in that fear. You know, it's awesome, really.
So this journey going across the country, you completed it. How did you feel afterward? Because this applies a lot to EXO Clarity.
Yeah.
And the you say on your site, clarify, cultivate, conquer.
Yeah.
And it's all about building resilience and self-confidence,
yeah,
internal, external strength. Tell us a little bit about how you were feeling after that, and why you continue to do what you do based off that experience.
Well, it's amazing. So one strange thing that happened was, every night, again, this was on my mind for 4 years leading up to this. Every day, almost every second, I'm thinking about this. And I have these two voices. One is fear, and one is like freedom. And so every night, and I'm not kidding, every night I'd have like two reoccurring dreams or nightmare. One was, I remember seeing myself, and there was like sort of an intersection. I could see like the intersection lines, and I could see lights, and I interpreted that as like I got hit by a car, which was my greatest fear. Was like getting hit by a car. And then another thing that I saw just as often was, I remember seeing my family in a beach parking lot with a banner that says, "We conquer," which is my motto, "We conquer." And so I remember at the very end, I saw that thing that I saw before I got there, which was my family in a beach parking lot. I didn't know what it was going to look like. And we had the banner for the RV. Like we kind of taped that or whatever on the side. But like it was crazy that I saw that before I got there, that they were holding that banner in a beach parking lot. And so I think a lot of times like that fear, it just tries to keep us from doing the thing that we should do. And so anyways, to answer your question, when I got to the parking lot, it was incredible, but I I've told people, I've done 3 big endurance adventures, and the best part is never the finish line, which is, at least it's not for me. The best part is the hardest part. It's the grind. Looking back on that was the things that I hated the most at the time. The flat tires and the wind and the trucks. It's like I look back on that, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so proud of myself that I didn't give up. Like I never gave myself a plan B. And so yes, I'm thankful that I finished, and that's a great part. But looking back, and I think this is going to be true for everyone, when you get to the end of your road, you look back and it's really the hard things that you're most proud of. It's like those are the best moments if you can walk through your fear. And so love the ending, but it was really a beginning in a way for the next thing. And it's like there's so many metaphors in adventure. I just got a visual of like crossing a creek, and it's like you can't just jump over to the other side. Life is like you are being intentional. You're looking for that stepping stone to get to the next one. And so the finish line for me was really the beginning. It was a stepping stone for the next thing. And that was a stepping stone for the next thing. And that's the adventure of life, is like when you walk through your fear, you see sort of the next stepping stone. It's like, oh yeah, that's where I need to go.
And you never know what it's going to be. And this is why you can't be attached to the outcome.
Yeah, right.
And I think it comes down to when you do hard things and when you step through fear and you really embrace the fear.
Yes.
And you get to the other side, or you cross the finish line and you look back, it's like, wow, I just did that. And then it fuels your self-confidence.
Yeah.
And it fuels the knowing that you're going to be supported through the next thing if it's aligned to your soul mission, if it's aligned to your values, if it's aligned to your why. I think that is one of the most beautiful gifts that you come out of doing something hard.
Yeah.
And so what were you telling yourself during the hardest moments of that journey across the country? Or even now, what do you continue to tell yourself in those hardest moments? And I want to start talking about the EXO Clarity and then your most current journey as well, from Cleveland to Cincinnati. But what are those thoughts that you're telling yourself?
Well, a friend asked me yesterday on the ruck, he said, did you ever want to quit? Like when you've done these really hard things, have you ever wanted to quit? And I said, no, like I never give myself a plan B. And I think the thing that fuels me, like I remember the hardest part on the bike ride. I remember exactly where I was. I was next to a railroad. And I just was looking up this hill, and my legs were just so sore, and just all the stuff. And I'm like, I wasn't thinking plan B, but I was just at like 1,000-mile stare. And and a friend of mine, Kyle, say his name because he's a great guy, Kyle Hetzel. He called me, and I just remember like he gave me this gift that we gave to the kids at Children's, and it just really inspired me just to keep going. So things like that, like, if someone gives you a gift to give to someone else, in this case, a donation, like that gave me so much fuel. And then also, just thinking about, I know so many people going through cancer, and at that time I'm thinking about someone that I was thinking about. And I'm like, if she can do it, I can do it. So I sort of find that when I think less about me and I think about others, then that's sort of what fuels me. Not only gives me fuel to keep going, but also just the joy, because I'm not thinking about my problems. I'm thinking about here's why, going back to that word, here's why I'm doing it. So just staying kind of locked in to why.
Yeah. Yeah. What would you say your deepest why is behind EXO Clarity?
It's to, like I said, like in the military, like you see the pain, and you just want to go back to health, right? Like you want to go back. And so I've found these things in my life through, self-discovery, through adventure and serving other people. And I've found these codes and these light bulbs and these treasures. And it's like, now I want to share that with other people, that you don't have to be like some crazy adventurer. That's not about that. The greatest adventure is serving other people. And the only way to serve other people is to walk through your fear. And so if I can do what my dad did, which is say, hey, I see the strength in you, and you can use this to help other people. And that's going to lead ultimately to your purpose and for a plan in life to make an impact. Like I want to point people to that. And I think there's platforms and ways to do that. But I've found, like, for me, adventure and all these metaphors that you can find in nature and doing hard things, like it really gives you so much clarity when you go outside your comfort zone, you get clarity. And so I just want to kind of take people on the same thing that I did, is find more about yourself by doing these hard and difficult things.
I love that. And it always starts with clarity first too. I mean, even the women I coach, I'm like, first and foremost, we have to pause. We have to slow down. We can't have life coming at us while also trying to heal, while also trying to figure out our purpose, while also trying to do all these other things that mean more fulfillment and happiness in our lives. And we have to take care of ourselves in that way, and we have to put ourselves first. So EXO Clarity, tell us a little bit about what EXO Clarity does and some of the solo discoveries, the team discoveries, the retreats that you host, and what you do for individuals and families impacted by cancer or burnout.
Yeah. So I'm 41, and I just keep hearing it over and over and over again, the word burnout. And I experienced that, just recently, a couple of years ago. I just went through this thing where I got burned out. Like I've had these highs, and I just found myself in this low where I sort of forgot who I was. Like, who's the guy that biked across the country? And so, like, I sort of had this Peter Pan moment where it's like, oh, this is who I am. And I realized that's an ongoing thing. When you get clarity, it's like a garden.
Yes.
Right. And then when you're not being intentional, the weeds grow back up. And so that's what happened to me. And that,
and we self-abandon.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you always have to work on it. You always have to ask, self-reflection. And there's so many awesome ways to do that with journaling and walking. I'm sure we'll talk about that. But like, I got to this place where that garden turned into all weeds. And so I had to do a lot of hard work to get that.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think the weeds started to grow and we started to lose touch?
I think there's external reasons. I think.
Because I think that happens to a lot of people.
Oh, yeah. Life
happens and it's coming at us fast. And before you know it, you're like, how did I get here?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. I don't know. I kept hearing that word burnout, and it's just, I think it's external reasons. I think I think we're distracted and too busy and constantly on our phones, and we're not outside enough. Like, go out and touch the grass, like we just don't do things that we used to do. Like, we're just too busy. And then we put our head down and we don't take time to kind of have margin. And I did that in my life, and I just started going through the motions, and I was still doing meaningful work. I was at the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society and then Cancer Free Kids, but I lost something during that time, and I had this deep desire to get it back, and I got it back through adventure. And I think that's what I want to do with other people, is like, burnout to me is when you when you're trying to be someone you're not. Like you
Yeah.
have chaos.
So true.
Yeah, like you
Yeah.
have chaos in your life
Mm-hmm.
when you try to be someone else
Mm-hmm.
and when you compare yourself to other people. And I still do it every day. Like, I wish I had that. I wish I had that job. I wish I had that truck. I wish I had this and that. And all of that leads to burnout. And so I think I know how you get out of that is by pausing and getting to a place. And it requires getting outside your comfort zone to get clarity on like, how are you uniquely wired and designed? Like, what are your strengths? I think that's just such an important foundation for your life. And you forget those things just based on the busyness of life. And so for just to take a step back and be like, oh, this is what I'm naturally good at. How can I clarify that by walking through my fear? And then how can I cultivate that so I can help other people?
And I love that. And another thing that I say too is when folks are like, well, how do I even explore what inspires me? How do I even know what I'm good at? And I'm like, what are you curious to know about right now? Like, what are you curious about? What is something, it could be as simple as, what is it that you want to get involved in? What activities build curiosity for you? And so I feel like that's sort of that first step is, well, what are you most curious about?
Right.
It doesn't even have to be, what are you good at? I don't even know if that's the first place we look.
Yeah. Right.
Because things that we might be good at may not be what gives us the most fulfillment all the time. So like, what are we most curious about? And start opening doors there. Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah, that just kind of came to mind.
Yeah. And like you, I think why we get along so well is like we both have this deep curiosity.
Yes.
Like I have my worldview, but I love learning and listening to other people who have different worldviews, different opinions.
And you mentioned diversity. Diversity is such a big word for me right now.
Yeah.
I mean, and it honestly, it's always been important to me, but not this important for some reason.
Yeah.
And I think it's because new opportunities are coming into my life and it's building awareness around the diversity piece and how important it is. And so, I just wanted to mention that too, because I know that you had said diversity earlier in the conversation and it was so resonant. So,
And I think we live in a world now where, gosh, we feel shy to share the beliefs and what we're discovering. It's like, I think we need to do more of that and just listen. I don't think we do a very good job.
Understand people.
Yeah. Try to understand.
Yes. Understand their dreams, understand their passions. I was just telling my kids this the other day. I'm like, the most important thing you can ever do in life is try to understand people.
Yeah.
And to connect and to bond and to support. That's the most important thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's my personal belief.
Yeah. I just feel like we always feel like we need to have the answer. Yeah. And it's, I used to do this a lot where someone would be talking and I'm thinking about what I would say or my experience. And it's just like, no, like listen and learn something. We all have learned something in our life that's so valuable and meaningful, but we don't take a step back and listen to that and use that deep curiosity, to learn more. And I think if we did that, the world would just be a better place. But it's always like my solution, my way. And so I've been doing that more, and that's given me so much more joy in life, just to listen and stop thinking about me and all the stuff.
Yeah. And I think just to give ourselves a little bit of grace, I think that life happens and we are living in this 3D materialistic world,
right.
This physical world where we have to make things happen. We have to have all of our basic needs met. We have to create safety. We want the best for our families. And I think at the end of the day, we have good intentions, but we sort of get lost in it. We get lost in the perfectionism. We get lost in making sure our kids are happy. And then before you know it, it's like, okay, wow, we need to get back on course here. And so giving ourselves, I think that's most important too, is giving ourselves grace and not judging ourselves because of it, because it's all in the learning anyway. It's like we're either growing or we're winning. And so that's how I choose to see it. And so with EXO Clarity, some of the opportunities that you give folks again, coming back to those solo discoveries, the team discoveries, and then the retreats that you do. Tell us a little bit about those and your offerings there, and how you might support even our listeners today.
Yeah.
And how that could start getting them closer to understanding their strengths and living their authentic selves, because we left off that burnout. And when we self-abandon and we're not living who we are, we're seeing that burnout, because I can personally relate to that as well. So I think that that was a great call out, is when we self-abandon, we feel burnout. Yeah.
Yeah. And we all go through that. And and like I said, I think it's important to just pause and rediscover something about ourselves. And I think a great place to start is what we're naturally gifted at, what we're good at. And so we have 3 pillars to EXO. We have solo discovery, where I'll do kind of one-on-one. I like the word guiding more than coaching. And so there's 3 components to that, where they take an assessment. For the solo discovery, we use strength finders. And so they take the assessment.
I've done that. Yeah. Very good.
Yep. It's awesome. And so they take that assessment, and then I reinterpret that through what I call a navigation guide. And we go through their strengths. We've got a bunch of exercise in there. A lot of it's like self-reflection. And we're doing that as we're doing something that is usually outside on an adventure. So they can pick whether it's rucking, and rucking is just like a weighted backpack, or walking. So we're going through that report as we're doing an adventure. So we're moving and talking. And then we also have kayaking, rock climbing. So they sort of pick the adventure that's outside their comfort zone, and we go through that navigation guide. And then we have team discovery, which is for teams. So I got certified in strength finders. I got certified in working genius. So for team discovery, it's the same thing, where we'll kind of build the day, whether it be cycling, kayaking, rucking, or all 3. And then we'll kind of figure out ways where they can operate more effectively as a team by understanding their strengths. And then the third is Ignite Discovery. And that is where we take families who are impacted by cancer, because when you get diagnosed with cancer, it's the whole family. It's not just you, it's everyone around you. And so it's a long road for them. And so, I have a very close and dear friend who is going through an extremely difficult journey right now with cancer. And I went to go visit him a few weeks ago, and I was in the hospital room, and his kids are sitting up on the bed, and his wife is sitting next to him. And I'm just like, it just reminded me that when you go through that journey, again, it's the whole family, and they're constantly going to appointments, and they're inside, and they're in hospitals. And I'm looking outside the window, and all I could see was like a rooftop with all these generators.
Not inspiring.
Right.
Or healing. Yeah.
And I'm so thankful. I spent the vast majority of my career with funding cancer therapies, and I believe in that. But there's other therapies that I feel like we need just as much, and that's adventure therapy, it's nature therapy. And so I told my friend, I was like, hey, I would love to take you and your family down to our partner, which is Dappled Light, an amazing place. It's in Red River Gorge, Kentucky. And they have these huge safari tents, these big canvas tents.
And it's called Dappled Light?
Dappled Light.
Okay.
It's amazing.
We'll put it in the show notes. Yeah.
Yes.
Great.
Dappled Light's incredible. Everybody should go. It's awesome. And so I took them down there, and it was just an incredible experience. It was 2 days, 2 nights. I took my son Harrison because my friend, his boys are about the same age. So Harrison was a volunteer.
Very cool.
And it was the contrast of being in that hospital room and then being with them out in nature and going for hikes. And we did the ski lift down there. That was their first time doing it, and their first time kayaking. And I remember getting out in the kayaks with the boys and teaching the oldest how to paddle, and just watching him like not give up. And then by the end of it, like he was an expert paddler. It was awesome. Like he discovered like he doesn't give up, like he's going to stick with it. And then the 2 younger boys, one of them asked, he was like, can I jump in? And sorry.
It's okay.
And I said, sure. Like, so we jumped in together, and to see that smile on all their faces is like, it's burned in my mind forever. And it just was like, such a reminder to me, that light bulb that went off in my life, which is adventure is a catalyst for growth and healing. It's personal development. It's understanding, like in the corporate world, for people to understand, like, you can discover something about yourself in a very unique and fresh way through adventure, doing something that you're not really qualified for, or it's a little scary. Like, it's incredible what you can discover about yourself. And also for trauma, just being out, like, nature nurtures. And so for that family to be outside, and, like, for Harrison and I to, like, build them a fire and to take them on these hikes and all the stuff that we did, it was like such a source of healing for their family. At the last night, Harrison and I went out hiking and found 7 rocks, and we went to Kroger and got some food to kind of grill out the last night. And Harrison and I gave him the rocks and a couple Sharpies, and I said, write down what you discovered about yourself on this trip.
Wow.
And so I had them go back to their cabin as a family, and the next morning they sent me a picture of what they wrote down, and it was incredible. It's not something that you would have discovered about yourself in a hospital or on your couch. And it was awesome. And it's something that's applicable to their whole lives. Like, they'll remember that strength that they found, and they can apply that to what they're going through now. They can apply that to school. They can apply that to anything.
And what were some of those words they had written down on those rocks?
Well, the wife, hers was let go, because she is the most incredibly supportive, positive person that I've met as a caregiver. And she wrote down let go, which just was incredible. And then the boys put, like, brave, strong. My buddy put limitless. And I love that, because I've seen him model that with his journey. And so, hopefully those rocks are on their desk or on their bookshelf. And I hope they never forget that. And, they'll learn the same thing that I did, which is you have to continue to cultivate those things. And it's just an ongoing process to remember your strengths. And it's something that you have to invest in every day.
How do you encourage people to invest and cultivate those strengths after the adventure? What are maybe the top 3 things that you share that they can do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, cultivating to me is like a gardener, right? We talk about those weeds that leads to burnout. Cultivating that is like being a good gardener, right? It's doing things like journaling. And I've never been like a big journaler before, but like I journal every morning, and I put an X on the page. It's real simple. I mean, I don't really write a whole lot. It's just a lot more bullet points, but just that self-reflection, it's sort of like a compass to my day. And so I put an X on the page, and the top quadrant, I put the things that I'm thankful for. On the right side of the X, I put the things that I want to accomplish today. Like the top, like if I accomplish these 1, 2, or 3 things, like that's a good day, right? Like, what do I want to conquer?
Yeah. Very
On
good.
the left, it's like, where do I need guidance? Like what are the things, like, where do I feel like I sort of feel lost? And you kind of write those things down. And I do that through prayer. I do that through friends. I do that through community. And then on the bottom, I put the things that I'm worried about, what are the things that I'm afraid of? And I think it's like all those things, you have to clarify it, right? If you don't, and I think there's a power in writing things down.
Yeah,
so
I agree.
Clarify it by writing it down in the morning. And then, your job is to conquer those things. And I do that right after I journal. I go for a prayer ruck. And if you don't pray, you can meditate, you can just think, like whatever your thing is. But I walk around, we live near a lake, and it's about 3 miles. And every morning, it's the best part of my morning. I put on my ruck pack. And like I said, there's so many metaphors with adventure, and we all carry like an invisible burden. And so those things that I write down, it's like I feel that on my back, and I'm walking. I don't take my phone, and I walk around the lake, and it's incredible. I'm saying the things that I'm thankful for. I'm talking about the things that scare me, the things that I need to accomplish. And I have so much clarity when I do that. And so by the time I get done, it's like I take that pack off and I feel so good, mind, body, and spirit. And then they start to slowly come back. The weight comes back. You open your laptop, you're getting your kids ready for school or whatever. Like the weight comes back.
But at that point, you have capacity for it.
You have capacity because you just took it off.
Yeah.
And the problem is like people get a lot of weeds in their garden if they don't if they don't have a daily habit, whether it's journaling or going for a walk where you touch the grass, like you get outside of your normal routine and rhythm. Like if you're not doing those things, the weeds are going to come back. And so you have to find a way to reset. And so find that daily habit. And so those are the three things that I do. It's journaling, it's rucking, it's always learning. Like I said, I'm always reading books and podcasts. And so it's tapping into that deep curiosity.
Yeah. I can relate to all of those things. I personally have a morning ritual where I get up before the house. I get up before my husband. I get up before the kids. And I have certain things that I do that allow me to reflect, to talk to my creator, to talk to source.
Yeah.
And to your point around journaling, I'm not an avid journaler. I don't journal every day. But there are moments in my life, I do journal. And there are moments in my life where I'm journaling more. And then there's moments in my life where I'm not journaling as much. But periodically, and it's ironic that we were talking about this, I just opened my journal that I've had for the last 4 or 5 years. And every once in a while, I'll go back through and I'll reflect on how far I've come.
Yeah.
And when something's really on my heart, I write that down because I know that that's something really important. And I know that's a pillar in my life and something that I very much want to focus and be guided on. So I think that that's really important. And I love this idea around, I've never heard this before. I love this idea about putting the X on the page and finding something that you're thankful, accomplish, something that you're worried, something that you need guidance. Do you have a worksheet on that you've created for folks? And if not, I would love to see something like that.
Yeah. Well,
I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah. It's funny that I'm not really the adventure guy, and yet I'm doing all this stuff. And I'm not really the journaling guy, and yet I'm doing it. So you find something that works and you want to share it with people. So we are going to share that. I'm working on a journal now. I hope that comes out soon.
Oh, wow.
But it'll be something where people can buy the journal on our website, and then the money from that goes towards the Ignite Discovery retreats where we take families impacted by cancer.
Very cool. Very cool. Okay. I love that. I love that. Of course, let me know how I can help with that.
Yeah.
I'd love to talk about your recent walk from Cleveland to Cincinnati and the fundraiser and what our listeners can do to support EXO Clarity and the families that you serve.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your intention with walking from Cleveland to Cincinnati, what inspired that and what the outcome was, because you just came home just recently from that adventure.
Yeah. Well, that goes back to that family we took on the first retreat, where I said we had 7 rocks. And so their family they have 5. And I had a rock for Harrison and I, and we took that back to our tent, and we were sitting there. And like I said earlier, like my dad, he called out the strengths in me before I saw them or realized what they were. And so I told Harrison, I said, you're a leader. Like what you did with these boys and helping them kind of walk through your fear. I said, you're a leader, and leader looks like a bunch of different things. Like he's just a quiet leader, but he's a leader and a great leader. He's a leader on his football team. He's a leader at school, and he's not the rah guy, but he's a leader by modeling the way. And so I said, you're a leader. So I called that out in him. And I made him write that down on his rock, which is on his book stand in his room, or his nightstand. And it bothered me that I didn't put anything on my rock. And it's amazing that I do all these assessments. I know I've taken all the assessments. So like I know what my strengths are exactly based on the assessments. But I just didn't feel like confident with that. And I'm like, I didn't write anything. And so it bothered me. And so this walk, this just goes to show everybody that you need to cultivate that by just always being a good gardener of yourself. And so when I did this walk, I started this, again, know all the assessments, and I'm like, it bothered me. So I'm starting this walk. I was so fearful. I think I was more afraid of this one than the bike ride and the kayak on the Ohio. And I'm driving up to Cleveland, and I just told my family, like, I told Sarah, I was like, I don't know. I just don't know about this one. I don't know why I'm so fearful. And so I remember looking out the window, like, how am I going to walk all the way back? You know, like hours in the car, you're looking out the window, and you're like, how am I going to walk home? And I remember the morning we got to the beach on Lake Erie, Edgewater Park. And I'm like, this thing is daunting. My left knee was hurting before I started. And so I was just really, really nervous and fearful. And it's amazing what happened was, and this goes back, I mean, this is so true. It's like anything daunting in your life, it's one foot in front of the other. So the best thing I did was like, I just took my first step. And it's awesome that like my family walked with me just for like five minutes. But it was just one step after another. And, you know, I think the first day I did 27 miles. And that's when I started to develop some blisters. And I remember we stayed in a hotel the second night, and I couldn't walk from the bed to the bathroom. My left knee was hurting that bad. And on top of the blisters, and long story short, I just wake up, 1,000-mile stare, no plan B, but it's like they took me back to the trail where I stopped. So they put me back exactly where I stopped the day before, and I would just the same process, just one step in front of the other. And you know, all the blisters and the swelling and all the adversity, it's just one step after another. And I was thinking about the family. My why is that I wanted to fundraise to get more families down there, to see more of those smiles when kids jump into the lake for the first time, or when they get on an ATV, or when they zip line, or whatever it is, go horseback riding. And so that really was my fuel. And at the same time, the gift of walking through something extremely difficult, I got the gift of remembering what my strength was. So on Strength Finders, my first strength is strategy. So strategic. My second is activator. And the cool thing was I realized those are true, but that second one is really my strength. And it's just a different word that I use than Strength Finders, which is courage. Because with Strength Finders, I'm an activator, right? So I'm willing to sort of jump out of the plane before I know all the details, right? And so for me, it's courage. That's the same thing as courage.
Right.
And so I remembered, oh, that's my strength is, yes, I'm an activator, but the beauty was like, oh, it's really courage is the word that I prefer. Like I'm courageous. Like I'm willing to do things that I'm not qualified for. You know, like I don't feel qualified to do a lot of the stuff that I'm doing right now, but that's my strength. And
I love that.
So it was really cool. So I got a gift, and then also we raised money to get our second retreat funded in September for another family.
Fantastic. Yeah. I love that. In September. Okay.
September.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's 2 days and 2 nights.
2 days, 2 nights.
Okay.
Yeah, they can go on our website. They can reach out to me. If they go to exoclarity.org, they can reach out to me. So we're still looking for that family that we can bless. So if any of the listeners know a family that's going through a difficult time with cancer, I'd love to bless them with an adventure in nature.
And then it's 2 days, 2 nights. Tell us a little bit about what they can expect on that retreat and how you're nurturing those families and healing those families and being with those families and being
Yeah.
present with them, the meals,
Yeah.
etc. Right?
Yeah.
What does all
Yeah.
that look like?
So it's the adventure.
Yeah.
There's so many things. So I'll reach out to them beforehand and say, what are the adventures that you feel comfortable with?
Okay.
So if someone doesn't feel comfortable, then we can find one that they do.
Great.
It should be a little bit outside their comfort zone, but they get to kind of choose the adventures they want to do. Again, horseback riding, zip lining, rappelling, hiking. We can meet them wherever they're at. So the adventures is great. Community. So we'll always have volunteers there that would encourage them that have been down that road before with cancer. So obviously I've been down that road, and so we'll bring other people. And so we'll reach out to people that I feel like they would really connect well with. Again, Harrison was the first one because he was their age, but we'll find other people based on the family that we take. So they're going to get encouragement. They're going to get adventure. They're going to get just peace, like great sleep, just being in nature.
Yeah.
They're going to get community. They're going to get great food. They don't have to pay a dime. So if they want to drive down, they can, or I will rent a car and pick them up, like whatever they prefer. The first family wanted to drive down as a family, which is great, but all expenses are paid for, food, everything. They don't pay a dime. And so there's a bunch, as you know, there's a bunch of great places to eat down there. You got Miguel's, you got the Toad's Barn, just a bunch of places to eat. So everything's paid for. The best conversations happen at dinner and lunch, I found. You know, like, what'd you learn about yourself? Like, this was your first time getting on a horse. Like, what were you thinking? Like, and there's so many cool conversations that come out of that around the dinner table. Yeah.
Incredible.
So it's just,
yeah,
it's great. And then the final thing is like, you know, we'll do the same thing with the rock exercise. Like, what did you discover about yourself on this trip? So we don't do assessments. It's just sort of an organic, like, self-discovery through the adventures.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. What were, aside from the exercise with the rocks, which I think is incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
What were some other outcomes or feelings, emotions that the family left with?
Yeah.
For the first retreat?
You know, it goes back to just the importance of family, you know, what my parents taught me, and for them to remember and understand, like, the best thing in life is family, right? Like, it takes, like anything, it's hard work. And so, you know, the conversations around the campfire, you know, like, we'll make a fire and we'll bring s'mores and just the conversation. So I give them the freedom, like, I'll hang out with them, but I also want to give them, like, family time.
Okay.
Be very intentional. So
beautiful.
I'm very aware of that. Like, I want to be there, but I also don't want to, like, get in the way of their family time. So I kind of cultivate an experience where they can just love and support one another through, you know, not being on their phones, not being in their normal routines and rhythms. And so I think, like, the fireside chats are the best for the families. Some awesome things happen, and some of those things they shared, and some they didn't, which is great. But I think cultivating that environment where they can grow and just love each other as a family is great.
Yeah. Beautiful. Back to that, we had said earlier that being able to leave encouraging one another, understanding how they can show up for one another as a family, having that adventure, trying new things, that peace. And I think when I always say us humans are more alike than we are different.
Yes.
We're all after the same things, that peace, that harmony, that balance, that excitement, happiness. So I love that so much. Amazing. I want to talk briefly about the ruck pack walks that you're doing, because I really want to encourage folks to get behind this in a big way. My family and I met your family yesterday morning. Can you tell our listeners about the ruck walks? I didn't even know what a ruck pack was when I said, I'm like, what is it? And so, and I have to say, my husband, like, he really enjoyed it yesterday.
Nice.
Yeah. So And then he started like Googling ruck packs. So
Nice.
yeah,
Awesome.
I know. Yeah. So that was cool. So tell us a little bit about that and how people can get involved.
Yeah. So when I did the walk, when I got closer, I think it was in Cedarville, a good friend of mine who lives in our neighborhood, Brendan.
I met him yesterday. Yes. Great guy.
Yeah,
Yep.
he was there. Awesome guy. Love him. And he walked with me for, I think it was 10 miles.
Wow.
And we had the most amazing conversation.
Yeah.
And there's something about walking. It's like I don't like meetings at Starbucks, and it's just something about walking. You're looking forward, you're looking straight. There's no distractions. You don't have your phone. You can't hear anybody next to you. And so, the blood is moving. You got vitamin D. It's like all these great things just by being outside. And I just think you think clearer.
Yeah.
And so Brendan and I had this like amazing conversation, just like challenges and accomplishments and how he got through this and that. And I would share a story to encourage him, and he would do the same. And it was like this amazing thing. And then Sarah walked with me for 16 miles. It was our 16-year anniversary. So she walked 16.
Wow. That's cool.
And the same thing.
So
it's like, it's just hard to do that on the back deck. So we just had this awesome conversation as we were walking. And then each day a friend would show up. Kyle, that great friend I talked about earlier, he walked with me for 6 miles. And then my brother and my brother-in-law, my sister, my buddy Matt. And so like every time, like I would have these incredible conversations. And so it inspired me to be like, I can do this. It's free. Like you don't need a gym membership to walk on a trail. And I have a bunch of ruck packs and I have more coming. And so I just want to share this thing that anybody and everybody can do, which is just encourage people, literally walking next to them, encouraging them and finding out like what's good, what's not good, and just let it be like an organic, there's no agenda. And so on Friday mornings at 6:30 to 7:30, 1 hour, people come to Nisbet Park in Loveland and we walk the Little Miami Trail. And it's been awesome. Just the people who've come the last 2 weeks. We've only been doing it 2 weeks, but I'm going to do it every day, every Friday, rain or shine from here on out. Never going to stop. And I pour sand into their ruck packs so they can pick a weight that they feel comfortable with. And if it's too much, they can pour the sand out. So they pick their poison, if you will. And I had one person last week who didn't have any sand. And that's great too. Yeah. So people can just come and walk, and it's not hard and it's not easy. And so it's like perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a great experience yesterday. So, and I even dragged my kids out of bed yesterday morning. I'm like, we're doing this. So, and it was good for them. It was good for them to get up, move their bodies, get some fresh air. And you're right. You're exactly right. I mean, a brief story, a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, and I would take walks during COVID. And it was some of the best conversations we had ever had. And I don't know, to your point, it's like you're out in the fresh air, nothing feels distracting, and you're moving your body and you're feeling good and you're in nature. And there's just something very freeing about that and liberating and open about that experience. And so we would have our deepest conversations there. And I loved it. And so yesterday, it was great. We met new people. We met your friend Brendan and Michael, who was hilarious and like made me laugh as soon as he addressed my kids. Like, who's the angriest right now for having to get up out of bed at 6:30?
Yes.
And then I got to know Sarah, and I were chatting again, and then I got to know your sister, and yet another gift.
Yeah.
And so, and a great lesson for my kids too. So that would have never happened had it not been for this amazing idea that you have. And so it builds, and it's very much aligned to all of my values too, which is getting out in community and building community and supporting things that we care about. And so I think it's fantastic. And we'll put a link to all things in the show notes. Nate, where can people find you and get more information on EXO Clarity, the ruck walks, how to donate, etc.?
So they can go to exoclarity.org.
Okay.
Is the website. As you know, a weakness of mine is social media, but I'm getting better.
Getting better. Yep.
I'm getting better.
No,
so
I
do
totally
have
understand.
an EXO Clarity Facebook page, and Instagram is on the way.
Great.
So they can go to that, but I'd say for now, just go to just look me up on Facebook, add me as a friend. That's where I'm putting them now.
Okay.
And so that's not going to change. It's always going to be 6:30 to 7:30 and then 8 to 9 every Friday. And ideally, phase 2 of that is I realize that not everybody lives where we live near Loveland. So if I can find other people who are like, this is great, like I want to add this to my side of town. Like if they live in Winton Woods or they live downtown, if they believe in what we're doing and they want to encourage people and do it for the same reason I'm doing, like I will buy more ruck packs. And so to have different little rucking groups or walking groups all across Cincinnati.
Yes.
I hope that happens.
Start a movement.
I will invest in it 100% because I believe in it.
I love that. I love that. I also had a friend of mine reach out on Facebook when I shared the one yesterday, and I think she's going to try to come next Friday too.
Nice.
So yeah. All right, great. A few closing questions for you. Thanks for sharing that. What I'd first like to ask you is, what is a consistent thought that gets you excited each and every day?
Helping people. It goes back to my mom and dad, where it's like, we're here to help people. Mm-hmm. And, I didn't get to talk about my mom, but she's the most joyful person. Anyone who hears this or knows my mom knows that her superpower is joy. And the foundation of joy, I believe, is thinking about other people. It's not wallowing in our stuff. It's going out to help other people. And I think that's really the secret to life in a lot of ways. It's just thinking about people more than you think about yourself. And so when I wake up on my best day, I'm thinking about how can EXO help people? How can I make that accessible and available to anybody and everybody that needs it and wants it? So
I love that. Thanks for sharing that. That I just keep coming back to that word joy.
Yeah.
It can be so infectious. And I think I always tell my kids to, like, you're responsible for how you make others feel. You're responsible for the energy that you bring into the room. And so that's certainly always top of mind for me as well. Even on my hardest days, I'm like, how can I continue to be open-minded? How can I show up as best as I can today?
Yeah.
And have an open mind. And so we all need people who bring joy to our lives. And I love that. Nate, what does it mean to you to live a consciously inspired life?
I just think that reoccurring word, just curiosity, like that deep curiosity, I just think we need that. And when you have that, you start to see patterns in your life, and pattern, like, pain is a great teacher. And there's things in our life that has brought us pain. And if we get out of that, then we can go back in and help other people. And I think that in a lot of ways becomes our purpose. So I think it's just being like that deep curiosity and just being intentional about what are the things that I can use with my strengths, my resources to help other people. And then priority, like, what are the most important things? Like, what are my, like, rarely do people think about their core values. Like, what are the things in my life? Like, this is what I stand on as a person. Is that love? Is it family? Is it adventure? Is it encouragement? Like, whatever that is, like, take time to think about that. And it becomes this internal GPS. Once you, like, figure out, like, how am I wired and how can I use that to help other people kind of navigate their suffering and pain and problems. So I think it starts with us, like, the strong help the weak. And so we need to be strong, right? So we need to take time to invest in ourselves so that we can help other people.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, understanding those core values, I don't think we take enough time to really ask ourselves, like, what is important to me and what do I value? And I think if there's one tip I could probably leave our listeners with today, and it sounds like maybe you would agree, is take some time and really ask yourself what's important to you and start writing down what those values are. Google Google
Yeah.
words. Google some
Yeah.
words to start to kind of inspire some thought-provoking exercises around what is important to you. And that gets you so grounded and rooted in self.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
in that way, you're not wavering and waffling when you're up
Yeah.
against something challenging, and you're prepared and you know who you are and what you stand for and how you want to show up and how you want to be in the world. So I love that. I love that so much. Nate, this has made my heart so full.
Me too.
And I feel like we're kindred spirits.
Yeah.
And I love you so much. And I consider
Likewise.
you a dear friend. And I love what you're doing in the world. I love the impact that you're making. And I have no doubt that you're going to inspire someone today. Whatever I can do to support you and your mission, your family, I'm here for it. And I'm behind it 100%. And as we were talking about your strength and you had mentioned how you're courageous, 1,000% you are, and you're a healer. And I see you as a light worker in this world, and we need people like you. So thank you for being you. Thank you for showing up the way that you do. Thank you for leaning in. Thank you for taking risks. Thank you for your innovation. Thank you for being a thought leader. You've inspired me today. You've encouraged me today. And it was an honor.
Thank you, Brandy. Well, yeah. I think exactly the same about you. And I'm so thankful that we met at that chamber event, carrying those boxes. Yes. And I just appreciate all the encouragement as I do something that's scary. Like, you've been one of the best cheerleaders for me. And so I'm just very thankful for our friendship. I love your family, and I'm just excited to continue that relationship.
Yeah. It's going to be great. And that's one other thing I just want to leave listeners with too, is when you start to listen to your intuition and you begin to trust yourself and you start to lean in and you start to surrender and take risks, you don't always understand why it's happening. But I think this is the important part of having those daily rituals and getting quiet with self. That way you can have capacity to hold the fear and to embrace the fear. And I can promise you, it's going to bring miracles into your life. And there's going to be so many beautiful gifts along the way. You just have to trust it. There are still things that I do that I feel this deep passion for, or this excitement and curiosity, and I still don't know why, but I know it's coming. I know I'm trusting it and I'm leaning into it, and I can't articulate why I feel the way I do sometimes. I can't put it into words or give you a clear mission statement. All I can do is lean in and trust and be led. So we'll leave that with everybody. Thank you again for being here. And if you have any questions, reach out to Nate, and we'll put all the links in the show notes that we talked about today. And everybody have a blessed day. Thank you so much. Until next time, bye-bye. That's all for today. Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. If you'd like to learn more about Consciously Inspired Minds, you can visit us at consciouslyinspiredminds.com. If these episodes have you wondering how you can design a life uniquely inspired by you, head on over to modelifestylecoaching.com. That's MODE lifestylecoaching.com, and schedule a free call. I'd love to learn more about your deepest desires and how we can get you closer to your authentic life vision and impact. Until we connect again, explore what inspires you.